Morning everyone. Just out and about on my regular weekend run. I'm 6 months post cancer treatment start, and I thought I'd take the opportunity just to talk about my journey, how it went, and how I'm getting on now. Thanks.
So it all really started for me back in February last year when a lump came up on the side of my neck, which turned out to be an enlarged lymph node. But it came up, and after a couple of weeks hadn't gone away, so I started the process, went to the GP surgery. The proactivity from the GP surgery was fantastic. It meant that I had my ultrasound. They confirmed it was something rather large, so they wanted to take a biopsy. So I went in for what was meant to be a needle biopsy, but again, the technician who was there meant to be doing the needle biopsy said that, sometimes they can be a little bit inaccurate, so I'm going to do a core biopsy instead. So they took 3 cores from it as well, just to be sure. And yes, it turned out to be cancerous. So obviously hearing that was quite a shock, but because this was just a biopsy from a lymph node, they still needed to find the primary. So the next stage after that was to book the scans and the PET-CT scan so that they could try and identify where the primary was. And the primary turned out to be weirdly on my tonsil, on my left tonsil. It turned out to be a squamous cell carcinoma, and it had only spread as far as the lymph node, so it was caught nice and early. But the primary itself was about 3.5 centimeters in size, but it was growing outwards towards the side, so which is why I had no other symptoms leading up to it. Prior to getting the lymph node pop up, I've been completely fit and well. No signs and symptoms, no cough, no cold, no voice problems, no talking problems. No energy problems. This time last year, obviously I was prepping for London Marathon, running on behalf of cystic fibrosis, and a couple of weeks before my treatment eventually due to start, I ran an ultra marathon, and so I was completely fit and well. Everything's absolutely fine, so it was a complete shock that this turned up. So the next stage after that was to then start the plan and start the treatment, which was radiotherapy and chemotherapy combined. I was backwards and forwards to Mount Vernon Hospital down in North London for a period of 6 weeks, which meant intensive radiotherapy every day for those 6 weeks, and 2 courses of chemo spaced throughout that 6 weeks, which, it was hard work, was hard going, but the staff were absolutely fantastic. They made it as easy as possible, very encouraging, plenty of support around. Needless to say, because of where it was that I was getting my treatment, it meant that eating became problematic. There was considerable amount of pain to be managed, but it was managed. The staff were very good at making sure that I had everything I needed to allow me to try and eat as best I could. Obviously eating became a little bit problematic, and I did lose some weight, which was being monitored throughout, but I shifted 2 stone. Some of that was, I could afford to lose anyway, but it has meant that I was keen to try and get back to restoring some level of fitness as quickly as possible. And I think that was part of my driver and why I've been able to try and get myself back out and about as quick as possible, is that I didn't want to spend too much time not doing anything. I was afforded the time to recover from work. They were absolutely fantastic about making sure I had the right time, the right support. So for myself, it was just getting myself out back as quick as possible, but as reasonable as possible. I didn't want to push my luck too much, but I also didn't want to lay around doing anything. It's a little bit of waste of time for me. So I started to get myself back out, started to get out on some walks, get out on some gentle jogs and some runs as quick as possible. And for me, part of that process really demonstrated to me who I can rely on as well. It became ever more present that, friends, family, and that close-knit support was absolutely invaluable. Big shout out to James and Caroline for what they did to get me through it, because it absolutely kept me sane. In some ways I felt sorry for my family having to look at me go through that, because yes, I had to go through it, but I was just dealing with it. But my family and friends who had to look at me going through it and were fairly helpless in the process, they could provide support and help and encouragement as much as possible, but they still had to see me go through it, which, to watch a loved one go through something like that was quite painful for them. So it can't be underestimated how much I valued their support in getting me through that, and it was through their help that I was able to get myself back out and about, get my recovery underway, build up the strength and the motivation to get myself back out there. So that leads us to where we are now. So it's now February, and running is starting to go well. I've managed to get myself out on a couple of good 12 milers over a few weekends over the course of the last month or so. And the idea is to build up to marathon distance again in April. So I'm running the London Marathon, but I'm doing the London Marathon my way. So I'm doing it remotely. So because I was unsure as to where I was going to be, I didn't book a place on the actual marathon. So I booked it to do remotely. So I'm going to be running on the same day as the marathon, plotting my own route, and I get the opportunity to raise some money for cancer research, to try and give a little bit back. It also means that I can try and stop in and see some people along the way who did support me through my cancer journey. So timeline wise, it's been fairly quick for me. It was, so start of treatment was in July, which ran through to the middle of August. And obviously, because radiation is cumulative, you don't really get the peak effects of the radiation till about 2 weeks after you finish that. So by the end of August, I was really feeling I was probably at the peak of the symptoms and feeling at my weakest and at my lightest. But then it was a case of just how quick I could recover after that. So it was just giving myself time to rest, feeding as best I could. The pain relief helped, but I tried to again minimise that as best as possible. So once I was off of the fentanyl and started to feel a bit more myself, it was a case of picking up some project work, picking up a little bit of work at home just to keep myself sane, get myself out on some little runs to build up the strength again. Got myself booked in on some PT sessions as well at the gym I was a member of at the time, and so that really helped just to start building that resilience back into myself as well. And then so starting to drip feed back in, but it was a case of by kind of end of October when I was when we managed to get away in Rome, came back in November and really started to feel a lot more myself. So started to pester work to get myself back in, which they accommodated quite nicely. So it was just a nice gradual return to work in of a phased process. But by January, I was back full time. So December allowed me just a nice gradual return to work phase process. But by January, I was back in pretty much full time, which has been great. I still get days every now and again where I have to give myself a little bit of a break, where I've been working too intensely. And there's a few various side effects that have been left over, a few residual bits kind of with the throat, a little bit of peripheral neuropathy, some numbness in my leg, and at the minute I'm going through Lermit signs, so if I exercise I get shooting pains, which will go over time, but otherwise I'll take where I am now, where I was 6 months ago, any day of the week. But it's been a rocky road, but the support has been fantastic, and so it's now a case of keep myself going, build up to running the marathon in April. And then what I'm looking to do is another little ultra or another adventure out in the summer, maybe June time, so that it will give me a point of pretty much exactly a year from starting treatment to getting myself back out to ultra marathon fit, which I don't think is too bad a feat. So that's where I am now. Obviously, thanks again to everyone who helped support me, and I look forward to seeing you all out and about.